Before I open the hearing for the Barnstable Conservation Commission, I would like to ask George to do a roll call for the quorum purpose.
Abadili.
Present.
Foster.
Present.
Hearn.
Present.
Lee.
Present.
Sampu.
Present.
Tangney.
Present.
Gilmore present. Administrator Darcy Carley.
Present.
Staff member Kim Kavanaugh.
Present.
President.
Present.
We're all here, Mr. Chairman. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Acting under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and Chapter 237 of the Code of Town of Barnstable, the Barnstable Conservation Commission will hold public hearing on Tuesday, September 19th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. for the applications of While Away Realty Trust, Nicholas F. and Melly L. Cooper. The hearing is being recorded and transmitted by on the Town of Barnstable's Government's Access Channel. The plans and application are on file and may be reviewed by scheduling appointments by sending email requests to Darcy Curley at 230 South Street, Hyannis. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the Town of Barnstable's Government's Access Channel. In accordance with the Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20, the chair must inquire whether anyone else is recording this meeting, and if so, please make your presence known. Hearing none. This evening's hearing agenda is posted on the town's website. On the agenda next to each application is the amount owed to the Town of Barnstable for the cost of advertisement. Please send your checks to Conservation Division at 230 South Street before the hearing. Remote participations. The Conservation Commission's public hearing will be held by remote participation as a result of an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency cited by the governor on March 29, 2023, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Remote public access to this hearing shall be provided in the following manner. 1, the hearing will be televised via Town of Barnstable's Government's Access Channel. 2nd, the real-time public comment can be addressed to the Conservation Commission utilizing the Zoom links 867-5331-8281 or use the toll-free phone number 888-475-4499 as shown on the agenda. 3rd, the public can also email the comment to darcy.curley@town.barnstable.ma.us at least 8 hours prior to the hearing. We have 2 requests for the amended order. We haven't usually don't see that many, but we have 2 tonight. The first one is Wild Away Realty Trust, request to amend the order of conditions SE3-5924 for reconfigurations of the building and additions of a swimming pool at 205 Superior Road, Austerville, as shown on the Assessors Map 095, parcel 013-002. Sean? Sean, can you unmute yourself?
Let me try that again. For the record, Sean Riley, Coastal Engineering, representing the applicant. Here with me is Sarah Toronto Flores for this unusual amended order of conditions. So we came before you a couple of years ago with the proposed plan that was approved. An order of conditions was issued. While Away Trust. Can everybody see my screen with the assessor's map?
Yes, yes.
So While Away Trust acquired 205 and then 175, which kind of triggered a reconfiguration and a hold on the first project. So we're coming before you with a new notice of intent at this same hearing for 175 for While Away Trust. Just like to show you the general locus area of 205. We're in an upland area. We do have land subject to coastal storm flowage that does come in through Isham Pond out of North Bay and into the property. I'll jump over to the other site plan. 1 second. So the green area that's shown on this plan is where land subject to coastal storm flowage encroaches into the property. There is a isolated wetland over on 175, the 100-foot buffer peaks into this property. You can see it here in blue. We're not doing any work within that buffer zone to that isolated wetland. The previously approved project had a garage, garden areas, a proposed pavilion, and a greenhouse, some orchards, all within land subject to coastal storm flowage, but within the AE zone. It's not a zone of moderate wave action or a coastal A zone. So there isn't large waves coming through there. It's still water flooding. So this is the previously approved plan with the currently proposed plan, to pull them up side by side. We've removed the garage and the pavilion and replaced it with a swimming pool and an accessory structure at the end of the pool. There is some grading that is happening within this area of the flood zone. This is not a hydraulically constricted area, nor again is it an area of moderate wave action. So there shouldn't be any impact on any of the flooding onto other adjacent properties, or deflection or refraction of waves onto any of the abutting properties. And the coverage is about the same within the flood zone than it was before with the two buildings. So it's fairly straightforward. We do have enough of an amendment that we have come back before you under Darcy's guidance for an amended order of conditions for this project. With that, I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
Any question from the commissioner?
Yes.
John?
All right, a question for Darcy. This is my first experience with all these years of dealing with such a significant difference between the original approved order and this request for an amended order. Does it ever reach the point where the amendments being requested are so great that it requires about a notification and the filing of a new NOI, Darcy?
This actually, they do get a butter notification. They get a legal ad. They have to have a legal ad posted.
Okay.
And basically, we look at it if we believe it's a significant change as far as, would you allow this under a plan revision, but this way that the abutters are getting notification and there's a legal ad. And this being a flood zone only, as
Right.
Sean mentioned, that I didn't see a problem with this coming in as a revised plan. Excuse me, an amended order, sorry.
If this was within the, let's say, 50 and 100 or wetland kind of a thing, would you probably have gone with a new filing, or would an amended filing be the same?
Usually, I mean, we have allowed a proposed swimming pool under an amended order, and they were just switching out some of the building area, so I didn't see concern with it. And I think I went over it with Tom too. So.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Darcy.
Mm-hmm.
If it is within the, in the buffer zone and stuff like that, would be a different story. It will be case by case basis too. So, any other question from the commissioner? Seeing none. Channel 18, any public comment on this?
We do have a neighbor here, Aaron Jennings. Aaron, are you here to speak to this or to the other While Away Realty Trust? Any questions or comments?
No questions, just listening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to approve this amended order as requested?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Sampu,
Aye.
Tangney,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Hearn,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Foster,
Aye.
Abadili.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The second request of the for the amended order is Nicholas D. and Melly L. Cooper. Request to amend the order of condition SE3-5586. Request to amend the orders of the condition SE3-5586 for proposed site modifications, including vegetation clearings, installation of a swimming pool and pool house, shed hardscape and associated improvement at 195 Bunker Hill Road, Osterville, as shown in the Assessors Map 096, parcel 007-003. Sean.
Good evening. For the record, Sean Riley, Coastal Engineering again, representing the applicant. Well, here we have an example of an amendment within the buffer zone.
Yeah.
So in this case, we have a buffer zone to a wetland and to an inland wetland, and we have a fully vegetated 50-foot buffer. This is the previously approved plan that I have on the screen now. It involved a proposed pool, much larger pool surround than you're going to see in the modified plan. It had a proposed pool with equipment with a limit of work going to the 50-foot buffer and then returning back to the 100 with a proposed sports court within the 50 to 100 and a landscape wall that was to be constructed to the wetland side of the sports court with grading and a fence, pool fence down along the buffer. So that was the previously approved. And let me jump over to the proposed. So with the proposed, we still have the pool. We've reduced the pool patio within the buffer. We have eliminated the proposed sport court and wall that was over in this area on the proposed and replaced it with a pool house at the edge of the pool. It is a reduction in coverage with this proposed plan. And we've also pulled in the limit of work along the right-hand side to about, let me just grab this guy. Oops. Will let me. Doesn't like me. Well, it's not letting me do it. But anyway, we've pulled in the limit of work on this side where that landscape wall was to about where the edge of the sports court was in the previous approved plan. So we do have a significant reduction in the coverage within the buffer zone. We do have a fully vegetated 0 to 50-foot buffer, and we have pulled in the limit of work on the eastern side. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
Any questions, Bill?
Yeah. First of all, when was this original plan approved? How long ago?
Let me take a look. It was in 2018. I believe we've asked for an extension on this last year, so we're working through our first extension on the project. With the tolling period of COVID, we were given to, I believe, the beginning of this year, and then we've asked for and received an extension on that order of conditions.
Well, I understand that our ordinance basically says that as long as you have a totally unimpaired 0 to 50, that you can do whatever you want essentially with the 50 to 100. And as a relatively new commissioner, I was not there in 2018. I have personally an issue with our own ordinance. The 0 to 50-foot buffer is really important for filtering pollutants, nutrients, sediment, and whatnot. But the 50 to 100, will essentially take up the rest of those nutrients. And wildlife species, whether it be reptiles, amphibians, birds, what have you, are really, that habitat is being reduced. And a lot of animals utilize that 50 to 100, and it's important when it's in close proximity to wetlands. And so I guess I have an issue with the idea of just clearing out the entire 50 to 100. And yet, I see what his original plan was. That's, it looks like you're backing it off. And I guess my question is, in the interest of conservation, do you think that it might be possible? Do you think the owner might accept the idea that the area over near the old, whatever it was, the sports thing over on the right that hard top. Might that not be turned into a lawn totally cleared? Because it basically suggests your entire 50 to 100 is going to be completely cleared. And maybe move that shed on the left side, maybe move that out of the 100. I mean, try to preserve a bit of the 50 to 100. Now, I understand that our ordinance runs contradictory to that, but from a conservation mind, I think, if the owner could do that, it would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Pete?
Yeah, actually, from a science standpoint, Bill has lots of important points. But I will mention that this is a better deal for the environment than we had in 2018. So I'm very happy to see essentially less hardscape almost in our 50 to 100. But one of the questions I have is the amount of grading still going to be the same as it was in the original proposal? That's question number one. And question two, perhaps getting to Dr. Hearn's observation, is there any possibility of maybe doing a wildflower meadow instead of lawn in some of this 50 to 100? That would provide better habitat. It would be aesthetically, I think, very pleasing. It's good for pollinators. I think it could be a win all around. But, again, this is a recommendation or a suggestion. I know that it's not something that at this point we demand in that if we've got a 0 to 50 fully vegetated. Thank you for listening. And I had that one question and then a request. Thanks.
Yep. So the question, the grading is very similar to what was approved. The big difference is we're not adding this retaining wall, which was part of the original design to accommodate the sports court, the level area of the sports court. So we're eliminating that impediment to wildlife movement within that area and gone to just a natural grading over on that side to meet the contours. As far as just to go back to the question about the 0 to 50 or the 50 to 100 foot buffer, we're not clearing out, and we haven't asked for clearing out the entire 50 to 100 foot buffer. We've got both of these areas highlighted in yellow that are to remain fully vegetated and wooded. And should they come back at any time, it'll require your approval to remove more of that vegetation. So I just wanted to point that out, that we do have some really good corridors, not to mention the entire eastern side of the property is also heavily wooded, which they have really consolidated their use. This is all wooded over in this area here. So they've really consolidated their use into a confined space to limit the disturbance.
Thanks, Sean.
Good information, good explanation. Thank you, Sean.
Sean, I got a question in terms of the shed or proposed shed on the other side. Have that been built, or if it is not built, can those pool equipment be housed in the proposed pool house that you're showing right next to the swimming pool?
I could ask. I've seen that done before, and I'm not sure what if the pool equipment is outside of the shed, and that's just a shed to keep the lawnmowers and equipment, or what the purpose of that shed is. But I could speak with the landscape architect to figure out what the use of that shed is and to see if it could be moved out.
Yeah, if you can speak to the architect, that appreciate. Any other question from the commissioner? Channel 18, any public comment on this?
Seeing none.
None? Let me try this one and see how it goes from there. Could I have a motion to approve this project as amended orders if Sean has discussed with the architect that can relocate the shed outside of the 100-foot buffer? Then he can submit a revised plan to show the revised locations.
Well,
Second.
Yes.
Motion's been made and seconded, I guess, Pete. Just a comment about the motion. I think maybe a little bit better to say approve this with a recommendation, and I would add in your comments then as a recommendation, because that's all we really have the authority to do, and hope that it does do that. Just a technical comment, Tom, that's all.
Okay. Yeah, we can amend the motion as what John is suggesting as a recommendation. So
Second. Second.
roll call.
Albedili,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Hearn,
A reluctant aye.
Gilmore, aye. Lee,
Aye.
Agney,
Aye.
Sampo.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are into the continuance. Only one in continuance tonight is Wild Away Realty Trust. Proposed rents and replace of a single-family dwelling and associated site improvement at 175 Sepier Road, Austerville, as shown on the Assessors Map 095, Parcel 013-001. This is a continuance from September the 12th without testimony. So the quorum is every commissioner. Sean?
Yes, good evening. For the record, Sean Riley again, Coastal Engineering, representing the applicant. Sarah Toronto Flores is also with me on the design team. Excited about this plan. A lot of great improvements over what's there. There is land subject to coastal storm flowage. Let me just, so you remember where the other property is, this property over here is 205. This is, we've got a panhandle for the neighboring property, and then this is 175, which is just immediately to the right of 205. So we've got the flood zone that comes into the property that spans over an isolated flagged vegetated wetland. We have a 50-foot and 100-foot buffer from that wetland. We have an existing single-family dwelling that encroaches into the 50-foot buffer with a brick patio and a clearing limit with lawn that runs just about down to the edge of the wetland, and then comes over to a workshop that's in the flood zone immediately adjacent to the wetland and within the 50-foot buffer. Lawn area around the house and outside the buffer. What we're proposing tonight is to raise that existing building, move everything, all the buildings outside of the 100-foot buffer. We are within the flood zone, but outside of the 100-foot buffer to the wetland, to remove the lawn area and the building that were shown on the existing, and replace it with mitigation that we're proposing to hopefully bank, because the overall project yields a net reduction in coverage between of the 0 to 100 of 1,746 square feet, over 2,100 square feet of net decrease within the 0 to 50. So we're not by the bylaw required to provide mitigation, but the applicant would like to provide mitigation in the way of restoring the 50-foot buffer to its fully disturbed condition. So you would have a fully vegetated 0 to 50-foot buffer on the property. He has also proposed meadows similar to the other property out in these areas here. So he won't have lawn, he'll have meadows and planting areas for the most part within the 50 to 100 with a asphalt parking with drainage within the 70 to 100-foot buffer, and then just vehicle tracks around the loop of the meadow to access the greenhouse and the pavilion that came over from the other property, and essentially the garage house that came from the other property onto this property. We are doing work within the flood zone, but again, this is a AE's still water zone. not subject to large wave action or moderate wave action, and also not a coastal A zone. One thing to note is we did submit a revised plan, and the purpose of that was to shift the edge of the driveway that was coming in. It came in on a straight angle on the original set that we sent last week. None of this really has any major impacts on what you're reviewing tonight. It's really just a twist to keep this out of what could potentially be an easement with the neighbor, and also to make sure that the existing easement that's shown here in purple maintains an access through the property. So we've essentially added just a grass path within the 50 to 100 so that there's nothing to inhibit any access across that existing easement. We've got the septic system is outside of the 50 to 100, and all of the buildings will be connected to gutters, downspouts, and recharged through dry wells into the ground. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
Yeah, that.
John,
Yes.
before I go there, can you tell me what is the revised plan date
It's today.
today?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sean, I'm sorry.
John?
Sean, if I read the narrative right, aren't you also proposing an IA septic system?
Yes, we are. We're actually proposing an IA septic system on this and the other property.
That's good to mention that, my friend.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah, this guy is he's something else.
Great. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah.
Bill?
Yeah, I think this is a really excellent project. I only have two points or questions. One is the meadow. You're only going to be mowing that once per year. Is that right? Is that part of the plan?
The intention is to let it grow out similar to the previous plan where they have a high fescue. But we wouldn't want any limitations. It's within the 50 to 100. That's the intent. But I wouldn't want to limit them from mowing more than once or twice a year. But that is the intent, rather than proposing lawn within the 50 to 100 in that area to replace essentially where the existing house was.
Yeah, no, it's good. Did I hear you say that you would be mowing it only a couple times a year?
Yeah, that's the intent, is to let it grow up within that area.
Yeah, that creates a better filter. I mean, that's
absolutely.
That's a good thing. So
Everything they're doing is great.
And then the only other thing that I am wondering about is you have 8 balsam fir. And I don't think of balsam fir as being native to the Cape, and I might be wrong about that, but I think about like red pine. People were big into red pine. I happen to live in an area where all the red pine ended up dying. And I wonder if the balsam fir might actually be subject to the problems here on the Cape. And so maybe that's a question for Darcy, or I don't know who, but is balsam fir a wise choice? And if it's not, maybe white pine? Darcy, what do you think of the idea of balsam fir in a planting?
Well, if it's within the 100-foot buffer, they should pick from our list. If it's outside of the 100-foot, then I don't have a problem with it.
It is within the 100-foot that we're talking.
Then we should have something from our planting list. I didn't pick up on that.
Like white pine. I'm thinking they're looking at conifers. It's kind of very, the first thing that you see on the 100-foot. I mean, the 50-foot would be a bunch of balsam fir. Can we change that to white pine?
I know white pines can get very large. So
can I make a recommendation on that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Could we put if we see fit to approve this, could we make it a condition that those be swapped out with something agreed to by the agent?
Review and approved by the agent. That would be fine.
With those could be swapped out. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Pete.
Yeah, I just would have recommended red cedar instead of white pine. They don't grow quite as big. They, at a younger age, provide great habitat. They're good for birds in high winds. So, Bill, I think in a lot of the coastal areas, that the red cedar, I think from my experience around the Cape, is probably a better option. But again, I'll leave this up to Darcy.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think a red cedar does make more sense.
Darcy, the mitigation area is about 6,000 square feet. Do you need any annual report?
This is the one that it was going to be as a meadow.
No, the meadow's actually within the 50 to 100. Everything in the 0 to 50 is native vegetation, woody species. It's let me see if I can bring up the plan. Sorry, I've lost the plan.
Because when I look at the planting plan, there's a lot of plants in that area.
Oh yeah, there is. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble finding that plan.
But yeah, we should have annual reports for 3 years on that area.
Yeah,
And I was
within the 50 buffer, within the 50-foot buffer.
Yep, and we should probably have some demarcation on that line.
We can add that to the plan.
Thank you.
Angela.
I was just going to say I don't know if you called out how many times I know you mentioned about mowing. Do we have that in a note?
I can, you know what I can do? I can provide the revised plans with that on as a protocol.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you want once a year or twice a year?
Once a year.
Yeah, twice.
Okay.
Twice?
Once.
Once a year would be enough.
Yep.
Angela?
Yeah, mine's just a quick question for my sake is I noticed a lot of reinforced lawn markings around the whole paveway in. What is that? Is that a turf thing?
Yeah, it's essentially just a reinforced lawn. They're plastic. It's turf pave. It's essentially reinforced with plastic cups that can just support wheels if they go off of the paved roadway, rather than just creating a fully paved surface. We're trying to minimize that by just having the vehicle tracks and the reinforced turf.
Okay, thank you.
It just provide more area for the infiltrations of this rainwater, stormwater. Pete?
Yeah, I just want to share my fellow commissioners with my mom's property and the fields that we have. And we're trying to keep them in still in fields. We've got, the Asiatic bittersweet coming in, Virginia creeper coming in. We've got Russian olive. If we limit this applicant in writing to only once a year, I do worry about a creep of undesirable woody or vines. I would like a little bit of flexibility given to the applicant here, that if they need to control woody vegetation, that we let them do it twice a year. That's my comment, with experience that I have, at least here in West Barnstable.
And again, this is in the 50 to 100 foot buffer. We're typically right. until the regulations get changed or your bylaw gets changed, that typically you put in lawn in other applications right to the 50-foot buffer. He's doing the right thing by putting in these meadows. So again, as Pete recommended, I would not try to limit him on doing the right thing and allow him to maintain it as necessary.
Yeah, exactly.
I support that 100%.
Thank you. Bill?
Yeah, just the last point. Yeah, I agree with that as well. I was looking at the plan, and literally those balsam fir are planned to be right in there, like the closest thing in the 0 to 50 buffer, right up against the wetland, just FYI. So it seems to me like red cedar would make more sense down there.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions from the commissioner? Channel 18, any public comment on this?
Seeing none.
None. Let me try this. Could I have a motions to approve this project subjects to one, receipt of revised plans showing with the red cedar in
No,
replace.
no, excuse me, Tom, but I thought we agreed anything on the list.
Yeah.
Anything on the approved list.
To be
Okay.
confirmed with the agent.
Yes.
Subject to receipt of revised plans showing the replacement plan on that planting list to be reviewed by conservation's administrator and with the approval. And what else? And the
Monitoring.
net out for twice a year for mowing. And the demarcation and the annual report for 3 years.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Through the chair,
Sean is shaking his head. Sean, is there a problem?
yeah, just leaving it at the discretion of the applicant for the mowing and not limiting them to the two times a year, as we just discussed.
Yeah, I'm fine
No.
with that. I'll amend my motion.
Okay.
Peter, I would say too, when you look at this plan in total, it's really a good plan.
Exactly. I'm in complete agreement. You know, yeah, this guy's going to do great.
Yep.
So we remove the mowing, the number of mowings in the meadow area.
Correct.
So we make that amendment.
So moved.
And the
Second.
markers. You don't want you to miss the markers on the mitigation area.
No, I mentioned that. Demarcation.
Yeah.
Second,
Second.
roll call.
Foster,
Aye.
Hearn,
Aye.
Tangney,
Aye.
Sampu,
Aye.
Abadili,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. That's unanimous.
Very good. Thank you
Thank
all.
you. Good luck.
All right.
Good job, Sean. Good job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Really nice job.
We are under the advisement, we are taking the Park City Wind LLC. Proposed installation of 275 kilowatt submarine electric transmission cable in Nantucket Sound and onshore duck bank system at Creekville Beach and Two Short Beach Road, Centerville, as shown on the Assessors Map 206, parcel 013, and Assessors Map 206, parcel 044. This is we take this application under the advisement on September the 5th. So we have closed the public comments from the last time on September the 5th. And then tonight, we are only talking about how we want to consider this applications. One thing I just want to mention, as a conservation, our jurisdiction is limited to the State Wetland Protection Act, the River Protection Act, and the local ordinances, Chapter 237, and the regulations. So before I proceed with the discussion on anything, I think it's important for us to take a straw poll on whether we approve this project or not. George, can we pull the
Yes,
commissioner?
sir. Abadili,
I just want to make a comment because the law says that an applicant's project should be approved if the commission feels it can be conditioned so as not to do harm to the resources within our jurisdiction. So the question is, do we feel on a straw basis that we can condition this to meet that standard? And I believe we can.
Thanks, John.
Foster,
I agree with John, and while there have been a lot of concerns expressed by the public, we need to focus and limit ourselves to what's within our jurisdiction. And I feel that given that, that this is a project that I would approve.
Gilmore, I feel the same way as Abo and Louise. I think in our jurisdictions, this project has met all our needs. So I agree. Hearn,
I agree with everything the three preceding people, what they just said.
Lee,
I would agree with what John said, and especially with the Colville Beach work that was done, and this is kind of similar to that locations in the Creekville Beach. So I will support this with some special conditions.
Pagny,
I'm in agreement also with these special conditions to this specific project. Yes.
Sampu,
I'm in agreement.
that's unanimous.
Thank you. So let me read the special conditions so that the commissioner can listen to what is being proposed as the conditions.
And excuse me, John, the commission obviously can discuss those, add to them, delete them, change them, or whatever, right? That's the whole purpose.
Yeah, that's why I said it's draft.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Thank you.
So
I just want to clarify that.
yeah. 1, the applicant shall comply with all permits issued by the town of Barnstable, Cape Cod Commissions, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, federal government, and any other regional and local jurisdictions. 2nd, the applicant shall label the cable laying portions under the Creekview Beach as an exclusion zone as suggested by the Waterways Committee. The establishments of the exclusion zone shall be coordinated with the harbor master. 3rd, the contractor shall provide a written construction protocol, including dewatering, stormwater pollution prevention plan, contingency plans, including spill preventions, and emergency response actions for horizontal directional drilling, HDD, and micro-tunneling installation at least 4 weeks prior to the pre-construction site meetings. 4, the applicant shall conduct a pre-construction site meeting for HDD and micro-tunneling installations, each with the conservation agent, harbor master for Sandoval River only, contractor, and the engineer 4 weeks prior to the start of the site work for each site. 5th, the route alignments and the final design of the micro-tunneling shall be subject to the review by the Town of Barnstable Department of Public Works. The micro-tunneling shall be at least 10 feet below the river bottom. The final design of the micro-tunnel shall be submitted to the Conservation Commission for the record. If there is a change of the micro-tunneling alignments, the applicant shall submit and revise plans to the Conservation Commissions for approval. 6, the time of the year restrictions for the HDD installation shall be between April 1st and August 31st as determined by the Division of Fishery and Wildlife and the NHSB. 7, the time of the year restrictions for micro-tunneling shall be mid-May to September. The applicant shall mitigate any potential hazards to navigations. The applicant shall coordinate with Waterway and Harbor Master for the work underneath the Sandoval River. 8, the applicant shall comply with all the conditions imposed by the National Heritage and Endangered Species (NHSP) to avoid adverse effects on rare species habitat, including but not limited to compliance with the final versions of the piping prover protections as approved by NHSP. 9, the applicant shall minimize the amount of the clay solids released during constructions by switching to water-only solutions prior to servicing on the seabed and the river bottom, and close monitoring of all drilling and hydraulic pressure and return volumes. The applicant shall comply with the best management practices for HDD and micro-tunneling drilling procedures, as well as those imposed by the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protections. 10, the applicant shall provide the final version of the benthic habitat monitoring program with the final report and the New England Wind Fishery Monitoring Plan as identified in the Massachusetts Water Quality Certificate with its results to the Conservation Commission for information. 11th, the applicant shall provide a monitoring report for the electromagnetic field EMF level for 3 years after the cable are energized. The monitoring shall include the kilowatts being transmitted, 0%, 25, 50, and 75, and 100% as rated, and the corresponding EMF level. The monitoring frequency shall be at least once per quarter with 3 readings each. The monitoring locations shall be at the following locations. 1, 2 water service location along the cable route at each cable depths between Nantucket Sound and Creekview Beach within our jurisdictions. Second, the entrance at South Beach Road sites, exit locations on the Creekview Beach Road, and 2 locations along the Creekview River. In the event that the monitoring results shows excessive EMF compared to known industry standards, the applicant shall provide a mitigation plan to reduce the mid-EMF level within the known industry standards to the Conservation Commissions for approval. The Conservation Commissions reserve the rights to add additional monitoring requirement after the initial monitoring report. 12, the applicant shall submit a copy of the surveyed as-built plans showing the offshore route and the micro-tunneling route within 1 year after the construction is completed to the Conservation Division for its record. 13, a certified ecological restoration professional shall be retained as the consultant for restoration work and provide annual reports for 3 years. Any change of the cert professional shall be a written notifications to the Conservation Divisions. That's my 13 special conditions. Any comments from the commissioner? Bill?
Well, I have received your draft, and I have a number of comments, and I'd like to go through them if I could. On number 3, you said the contractor shall provide a written construction protocol, including blah, blah, blah. And the contractor shall provide, I'm assuming that is to the Conservation Commission. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
And do we have any way of approving or reviewing or commenting or modifying said construction protocol? Or do we just simply say, oh, that's what you're going to do? Do we get enough?
It's usually done with Darcy, the construction review. That's usually the way we do that. And it's subject to her participation and review of that, usually. I mean,
So shouldn't it say, shall provide to the Concom for approval or approval by the agent? I mean, shouldn't we say something like that? That's a question. I wonder about that. Anyway, that's one point.
Bill, can we discuss that? Or do you want to go through them all?
Well, I think we should discuss that. Yeah.
Because I happen to think it's a good idea. So, but I wanted, because you have a number of points, I thought it would be easier to go one by one if that's okay with you.
That would be fine.
Well, then I'd like to just say I think that Bill's suggestion in this one is probably a good addition to it. Darcy would review and approve or not approve construction protocol or modify it.
Yeah, that has been our procedures in terms of submitting the protocol, and I kind of missed that, assuming that's the assumption that I'm doing. So,
yeah, I'm just thinking, given the controversy we're dealing with here, it just seems like saying that we have some approval and that we have some capacity, not just accepting that they're going to provide it and that's it. So I feel like we need to say that. So, so we're
That's
good with that.
Yep.
So on number 4. It's more of a English thing than anything, but the applicant shall conduct pre-construction site meetings for the 2 different things. It seems like it should say separate pre-construction meetings for HDD and micro tunnel installation. Your use of the word each there seemed a little awkward, so separate meetings with the agent. I mean, that's kind of an English thing. And then at the end of it, it says, and the engineer. I think that should say town engineer, and not just
or use project engineer from the.
So it's referring to the project engineer for Avangrid. Is that?
Yeah,
that's what that means. I wasn't sure who the engineer was, so it seems like we might want to clarify who the engineer was.
Okay.
And then on number 5, the route alignment and the final design of the microtunnel shall be subject to, and again, to review and approval by the town of Barnstable Department of Public Works. Here we're talking about, I think we need to have review and approval by the town of Barnstable Department of Public Works, just to specify, yeah, we have some capacity. We're not just being handed a bill of goods and we have to take it or leave it. So I think that's sort of like item number 3, where you're saying that we have that the town Department of Public Works has some capacity for approval. Are we good with that?
Well, yes. I just add that in there.
Okay.
I would agree.
Let me go back to 4. Usually I write something, I just say because of each, this kind of saying that there will be a separate meeting, a pre-construction meeting for the microtunneling and the HDD.
Right. I inserted separate. You didn't use the word separate, so it was more of an Englishy thing, but yeah. And then this is my own ignorance. Under number 6, when you're referring to the time of year restriction for HDD installation shall be between April 1 and August 31, does that mean that you can't do it during the time of year restriction, or you are restricted to doing it between those months?
Yeah. You are restricted for that period. You cannot do anything between that period.
Restricted, you can't do it.
Right.
That's, if that's clear to people legally that you can't do it during those. And so that I have the same question for number 7. You know, what is the restriction referring to?
I was confused by that also. I thought
I was likewise.
Okay.
you were
So might
saying,
that be,
that needs to be clarified.
Number 6, the condition was coming out from the NHSP letter. And then the number 7 is because of the navigation issues that from the harbor master and waterway. That is the suggested time of the year restriction, so that you cannot do any construction between mid-May and September. There's a lot of both.
The way it reads is it made me think that was when the only time they could do the work. And I was thinking, oh my God, that's when everything is going on.
so George thinks the same thing. So 3.
I had the same thought too. I had the same question.
I get, it's good as long as I think you need to edit that so it says it really clearly that time of year restriction means
No work shall be done between X and Y.
Right.
however you do it. I mean, I just think it's an English thing. I don't know if we want to belabor it here, but
Okay.
I think we're all agreeing what it says, what it's meant to say, that no work can be done between those dates.
Right.
And I read it okay, but I get no objection to trying to clarify it, make it clearer. But
Yeah.
Tom is right. Tom, you're saying no work is done between April 1st and August 31st. Period.
Correct.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
just a matter of English, I think, as Bill said.
yeah, but 3 of us got hung up on that, so that's something.
I'm sorry, while we're on that one, can you put a date for this when you have just to September? Is it supposed to be mid-May to mid-September or to October 1st? I wasn't sure. What do we mean by to September? I need a date there.
Good point.
Say the end of September, like September, could be October 1st. Then you said, then we'll be
Thank
done.
you. Yes, please change that to mid-May to October 1st.
Okay.
Thank
So on number 9,
Chairman Lee, can I just jump in for a sec, please? Thank you, Tom. To Darcy's point, I think it would be helpful on the start date to have a date specific. It's mid-May can vary somewhat, so I think just a date certain would be helpful.
May 15th to October 1st.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Bill?
so number 9, you are referencing best management practices for HDD and micro tunneling. And as somebody who knows nothing about best management practices for HDD and micro tunneling, I don't know what those are or what it means, given the controversy, blah, blah. I'm just thinking, is it like best management practices as identified by citation? So it's it's clear what the best management practices are. I mean, I don't know what they are, but
Well, I think it's coming out from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection for that practices. I have to go look at the citation stuff. Okay.
Could you just, when it refers to best management practices for HDD and microtunneling procedures as identified, I would say as identified by whatever it is, the Mass DEP for the blah, blah, blah. I just feel like we need to, because for all I know, there are like 6 different levels of PMPs for these things. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
I would recommend citing something. Is that okay? So number 10, the applicant shall provide the final version of the benthic habitat monitoring program with the final report. That's an English thing. It seems more like shall provide the final version of the benthic habitat monitoring program final report, not with the. I would delete the word with the.
But those are 2 different things. I'm sorry. We have a benthic habitat monitoring plan that is in draft form currently, and then following construction, we'll be providing a final report. So I don't mean to interrupt, but there are two different items there.
There's 2 different things.
Okay.
Well, while we're on that, so what? So we get a report. What's the action item? That we look at it and say, okay, what are the parameters that are important that we want to make sure meet certain criteria? I mean, we're going to get data. Now, so what do we do with that?
This is the
How relevant is it?
This is the program under the state permitting. And I add that in there because when they're doing that report, that programming, and then for the final report, and I just mentioning that we should get that report for information. I don't know what data is in there. I did not look at what parameter and that sort of thing in there. So
Louise, I think those reports are reviewed by a different agency, and we're just asking for a copy of it.
Right.
So those agencies have to approve or not approve.
That's all we should be using it for. None of us have the level of expertise.
No, we don't.
Exactly.
You're right, Peter.
This is just, we're getting the report to put into our records.
And it's reviewed by somebody else with better knowledge than us.
Exactly.
Can I just make a suggestion? You just say, she'll provide the final version of the benthic habitat monitoring report and whatever the other one was, with the final report for the commission's reference. Just leave it at that. That's the way we did it in the Koval speech.
Yeah, that's what we should be doing.
Good.
I'm good with that. Shall we move on to number 11? Number 11, it has to do with the EMF monitoring. And I had the most trouble with number 11 in that it was really unclear to me what was being asked. It says the monitoring location shall be at the following locations. It says 2 water surface locations along the cable route at each cable depth between the wind farm, or you said Nantucket when you read it, and the Craigville Beach. And I don't know what that means. And you refer to 2 water surface locations. Do we not want to have perhaps information about EMF at the water surface as well as at the sediment water interface, meaning on the bottom, because these things are being put on the bottom. And I would think we would want to know what kind of radiation is happening literally at the surface water interface. And in terms of, it's really unclear to me where we're talking about getting such measurements in the area between the wind farm and Craigville Beach. And then it says, two parentheses, it says, the entrance at Short Beach Road site, and I would think this is an edit, the stream crossing entrance at Short Beach Road site. It's the stream crossing you're talking about. And then likewise
at Two Short Beach Road, where they have the first pit that going into across the river bed.
Right, but by specifying it as a stream crossing entrance, that's what you're looking for, right? I mean, it just seemed kind of vague to me. And then likewise, exit location on Craigville Beach Road, where it might be more like the stream crossing exit location on Craigville Beach. I'm just trying to nail it down so that it's clear where you're literally going to be making these EMF measurements. Sediment water interface, surface of the water. I feel like that whole thing needs to be tightened up.
Okay.
Those are my comments.
So let me answer the first one. So what I was thinking about the two water service locations. So you probably take it to the meeting, the EMF readings from the boat. That's why I said service at two different locations. I don't trust one location, and you'd have different numbers. So at least you're taking at different depths. If the cable changes from, let's say, 3 feet to 5 feet, from 5 feet to 3 feet or something, then you need a different number for that different depths. That would be a difference in terms of the EMF results.
Are you talking about a cross section, like at different depths? You're measuring as one would do in limnology or oceanography, where you're basically taking measure as at the surface and then every foot going down until you hit the bottom. Is that what you're referring to?
No. The cable is going to lay at the bottom of the oceans, right?
Right.
So if the step is the same, then you're only taking maybe two different readings. But if the depth of the cable is changed from 3 feet below the bottom to, let's say, 3 feet, if there is a change, then I want to get a different reading for that.
But don't you want to also kind of look at what's going on with radiation on the bottom? Literally the sediment, on the substrate. So because the thing is buried in the benthic presumably there might be some effect on flounder, making that up, but some benthic species or what have you, or fish or whatnot that are cruising around on the bottom. Wouldn't we want to have somebody from a boat measure what's happening on the surface, lower the thing down, and measure what's going on in the bottom? Anyway, that's my thought.
Okay. Pete?
Charlie's got his hand up, Tom.
Let me go to Pete and then I'll come back to Charlie.
No. Get Charlie's input immediately.
I'm not sure why, but I appreciate it. My question is this. The cable, and I see Hans van Lingen is on, so perhaps he can help us, but the cable is up to the beach will be set below the surface for its entire length. And I would, at perhaps a relatively uniform level, but to the point made about the inner surface between the top of the soil column and the bottom of the water column, that perhaps if it's possible, every segmented length of or identified length of points from the state line, which is the limit of our jurisdiction, every 2 feet, every 1,000 feet, whatever makes sense in terms to get a good sampling up to the beach, and then across the beach to the limit of your jurisdiction might be an easier number to achieve. I also know that with respect to some of the Rhode Island experiences where the sand is moving around atop the cables, hopefully not exposing them, that the depth of cable below surface may well vary from time to time, depending on sand waves and the other considerations in terms of that dynamic environment. So I'm thinking that a reasonable interval of measurements. We're about 3 miles up. We're not about. We are 3 miles offshore of the state line, and probably a quarter mile to a half mile onshore before it leaves your jurisdiction. That you might want to consider that as an approach. Just a layman's thought, and I emphasize layman, but might be more manageable.
I like it.
Okay. Thank you, Charlie.
Can I just ask for clarification, Charlie? Are you talking about measurements of EMF or the measured depth of the cables?
Yes, measurement of EMF, because
measurement of the EMF at a fixed distance. So let's say a quarter mile, a half a mile.
I would just add to that. Charlie just brought this up. Made me think, if the sand is moving around, would we want to know what the depth of the cables are if that's changing substantially?
No, that's a nightmare.
Yeah, I agree with Peter.
It is a nightmare? Why?
No, because you've got the bottom changing, certainly over the shoals, over a big shoal. And if it gets deeper, it gets deeper. If it gets shallower, I mean, the company in front of us here, Avantgarde, they want to keep these cables buried. But
Right.
if we say if it changes by 2 feet, I mean, a hurricane comes in and that depth is going to, the sediment over that is going to change by 2 feet somewhere along the line. That's a guarantee.
So
And
if it's,
who's going to go out there to find out where it's changing?
I'm talking about the beach.
Oh.
If it changes by 2 feet and it's 10 feet under, I would want to know that.
Right.
In the river. Luis, you're talking about the river, the pipe under the river?
Talking about Craigville Beach.
Oh, okay.
No, Craigville Beach under the river would not change.
Yeah,
So
certainly.
I'm talking about Craigville Beach.
Well, certainly at Craigville Beach, we could know that if there's a major shift, and
Right.
that's just a tiny portion of what we're asking. So finer detail on that, Louise, we can ask that.
I think it's tiny, but it ought to be in this document.
Okay. Pete.
Okay. So I got my hand up, and I've got a fair amount of science background. I feel pretty comfortable about thinking about benthic studies, and I don't know anything about EMF. I don't know anything about horizontal drilling. I don't know anything about all this other engineering stuff. And I'm looking at my fellow commissioners, as much as I respect you all, and I'm very thankful. Many of you know law a lot better than me, because frankly, I don't care.
You don't mean that, Sam.
Of course I don't. I'm thinking here that if the state, with its expertise, is asking for some of these measurements, then we should just be getting a report from them. I don't have the experience. I don't think really anyone, and I know Darcy doesn't have experience to evaluate EMF levels, that if someone who's got expertise is reviewing this at the state level, where they probably are paid, we're not, to have this level of expertise, then we're just needing reports that essentially have gone through the state, and the state says, fine. I don't want to put a whole lot of extra work on our staff to have to somehow evaluate if something is good or not. We don't have that expertise.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, sure, asking for these reports to be put in the record, especially if it's already being done at the state level, That's good. If it's okayed by the state, they're better at it than I think anyone here. And I would respect that even on the science end of things.
So full disclosure, we haven't received a requirement to date on EMF monitoring. So if this commission would like it, and I'm not saying we can't do it, but this would be a unique requirement. So I just want to make sure I'm fully.
So I want to comment on that, and I'll be asking Avangrid about this. So England, or I should say Great Britain, Denmark, Germany, have had windmills, offshore windmills now for decades. That's correct, right? Yes. I suspect that there was an interest by these governments, knowing the level of environmental awareness they have, generally better than America. They have worried about EMF at some point in history. So Hans, can you tell us, based upon the regulations imposed by countries that are more advanced than us in understanding offshore wind and environmental impacts on the benthos of EMFs, have there ever been, in recent history, not beginning, have there ever been EMF concerns to either benthic organisms or human beings swimming or boating in the water above it?
Excuse me, I've got to interrupt because I am really concerned that we cannot, under the law, take that kind of testimony at this point, Peter.
That's true.
A question that maybe should have been asked, but it's closed. That's it. You have no greater right to talk than any abutter. So
I will rephrase that. Thank you, Avo. Given that this is something outside of our understanding, given that the state is not asking for it, it would be my opinion, and I wouldn't say professional because I don't know this stuff, that this is outside of our ability to evaluate whether it's a problem or not. And given that this is a fairly old technology, we did have that on the record. So that is part of the evidence we have. This is not new technology. This is well established in many parts of the world, that it's not something that I'm going to worry about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peak.
Can we jump in on that, or you want to talk to him?
No, I want,
Charlie has his hand up.
Who?
I think Charlie does.
Oh.
Charlie does.
Charlie?
And Charlie can talk as our town lawyer, but no other evidence could be introduced.
Right.
Understand clearly, and I will just observe that the agencies that are taking the strongest and have the strongest authority are the Department of Public Utilities and the Energy Facilities Setting Board. And we do not have a final decision from them as to how they're addressing this issue and what, if any, monitoring they may order. I would observe that I think it's well within your jurisdiction to order that monitoring be done and the reports be provided. And I think there is the experts used by and offered by the developer are credible experts who have identified the industry standard with respect to acceptable and unacceptable levels of EMF. And the monitoring, if no one else puts it in place, we've got at least something in place that we can look to that standard as it may evolve, but certainly as it's published currently. These are not hard to find. And if you see an errant or eye-popping number that is of concern to us, we can revisit the matter, and there are a number of ways to open that up for inquiry. But I think if we just require that all reports on EMF that are provided to any federal, state, or local agency, county agency or local agency are undertaken, that those results will be shared with us contemporaneously with sharing them with those other agencies. End of story. To Pete's point, we're not experts, but the objective standards that are set or accepted in the industry are easily identifiable? Should they change the identifiable? If 100 is the acceptable norm, we get a 250 level, whatever that may be, in the abstract. You got a problem, and we got to address it. I'm particularly concerned about, and I've certainly heard enough about concerns from the interface between at least low watermark at the beach, if not further south, up through, across, and under the beach. That the public is going to be vitally concerned about those numbers, and frequency and transparent reporting, I think, is critical to identify that issue, if it is an issue, and to give public confidence if that can be achieved by referring to industry standards. So I'd respectfully recommend that you be given the difficulty of testing offshore from low water mark out, that you do reasonable spacing, and inshore that you do it, that you order it for perhaps a much more closely spaced interval, and that those numbers be shared with the Concom and posted as they're received. It's not a big task. So thank you.
Tom?
Thank you, Charlie. Well, John?
Yeah, I would go a little bit further. I mean, we've heard so much conflicting stuff from many of the public. I was really impressed with this and concerned about possibly EMF. Now, the applicant clearly submitted evidence and testimony saying it's not going to be a problem. I really believe we should require monitoring of EMF on some reasonable basis. And furthermore, I think we should put something in there that says if at some point the monitoring reports indicate that it exceeds industry standards, Charlie's words, that the applicant would be required to submit a remediation proposal for Conservation Commission review. I mean, it's again, I believe the applicant that it's not going to be a problem, but you know what, prove it to me. And the public's got raised some really serious issues about that and concerns. So I'd like to recommend that we have monitoring reports and then some standard that says if in fact it exceeds industry standards, the applicant would be required to submit a remediation for conservation approval. That's my thought.
That's the reason I kind of including this special condition in there. I mean, as an engineer, I want to, not that I don't trust people, but I like to see some results to demonstrate that yes, there is no adverse effects on or extreme high level of the EMF stuff. And, so there is some standard kind of comparing it. So that's why I put that condition in there. And definitely, I mean, I can try to tweak this down to a fixed distance offshore and then maybe closer to the beach area with a low tide and that sort of things. And then at different depths to take some readings. And so that can be adjusted for that. So, Charlie, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, the only other comment I'll just offer on that score is that as this project at its face value and at its financing level appears to have an expected life expectancy of maybe 25 years, I think one would not be surprised to see it be longer than that. I've dealt with Eversource transformers that have a 25 year life and they're still in service and not leaking at 40 years. So my thought is that for the entire operational life of these, there ought to be annual or semi-annual monitoring with reports. It's as things age, as we all know, and I know all too well, that I'm having problems I never had as a young kid. So I'm concerned that we have some reporting on the back end of this project when saltwater exposure and everything else may create issues that we think might withstand but might not withstand the passage of time. And if it doesn't, the results could be catastrophic, quite frankly, at the beach level particularly. So I would respectfully urge that we extend this reporting period for the life of the project.
Wouldn't that be part of if they come in for a certificate of compliance, wouldn't that be part of a condition within a certificate of compliance, Charlie, under normal commission procedures?
I think the certificate, I think your conditions can extend beyond that, beyond the issuance of the certificate of compliance. But given the unique nature of this project and the life of this project, I'd like to be crystal clear and invite, counsel for Avangrid to help us craft the language. But I also quickly know when I say that we're bumping up against time deadlines here. So on the 21 days. So, but I would think that we ought to make crystal clear that this obligation continues throughout the life of the project.
Thank you, Charlie.
Can I
Because
say so?
when I was drafting it, I was thinking about the COC and then filed it when the project is done. But then when I write the condition and I said, maybe for the 3 years after the cable is energized, because by the first year or 2 years, the cable may not be energized.
Right.
So then, the 3 years will be gone pretty quick.
Absolutely.
Okay. Bill?
I would propose that we have this EMF monitoring at 100-foot increments starting at the essentially the high tide, mid tide, what have you, and go out at 100 feet for about 500 feet. 5 measurements, one essentially right at the water's edge, and about 5 measurements, 100 foot a whack, essentially directly over where the cable is. And then thereafter, is it every 500 feet or is it every 1,000 feet until it's, off our jurisdiction, wherever that, what is that, the state line?
It's about 18,000 feet. It's 3 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you could do it every 1,000 feet. But I do think you should do it like every 100 feet and make those measurements right over where the cable is.
Thanks, Bill. I think the
Excuse me.
100 is reasonable, but I want to think about the, once it goes off the 500 feet, because you got 3 miles of the cable in there. So I just want to make something reasonable to look at. Darcy?
Yes, thank you, Tom. Could I recommend that you just make it clear that as far as the report must state each time what the acceptable levels are? I would say to assist with, to help staff have a date that it's due, a time period each year, so we can keep an eye out for it.
Okay.
And there are a lot of times, staff gets so busy and we get so many reports coming in, we don't want to, somebody throw this report into Laserfish. I think we should have that if it comes up that it's over a certain level, that they need to call the conservation administrator right away. So, we're put on alert. And I just want to state that, we do have certificates of compliance with ongoing conditions. So the ongoing condition should give the date that the report's due each year. And then if it exceeds a certain amount, that they have to place a phone call to the administrator, and let them know that this report's coming in and they have concern.
Okay. Thank you, Darcy. George?
Yeah, we've talked about the offshore, the Craigville Beach end going offshore, but I think it's also important that we have, as you did, Tom, but include the monitoring for the microtunnel where it enters into the water at the Centerville Riverside, maybe a midpoint, and then another where it exits on the other side.
That's what I was mentioning. One location is at the Too Short Beach Road as the cable is entering that to the bottom of the river, and then 2 locations along the cable run on the river, and then as it exits on the other side, there will be another one. So there will be like 4 points.
Okay, perfect. And that's going to be on the bottom, correct?
Yeah.
Or is that okay? Thank you.
Pete?
So yeah, you all convinced me that some monitoring here seems certainly likely and plausible, especially around the beach and Craigville River. Tom, I would agree with you that once we get 500 feet from the high tide mark at Craigville Beach, I can't see more than once every half a mile on any kind of request at all, if we even worry about that. Again, it's within our quote jurisdiction, but it's not going to be affecting people. And I doubt very much that it's affecting in any significant way mobile organisms. Migrating flounder or finfish swimming in the water, it ain't gonna affect them. They're in and out of any kind of field in seconds. So let's concentrate on the beach area, Centerville River area, the input and output, those four spots, and keep it local and where people are.
Okay. Thanks, Pete. Louise?
This is just a little detail under 11, the very last sentence. You had just been talking about measuring the EMF at the entrance and the exit, and then you said across the river. And you really need to add along the cable, crossing the Craigville River, because you don't say that, you just say 2 locations along the Craigville River.
Right.
You got that?
I can clarify that, but basically is along the cable run.
Right.
That where you measure the.
I know that's what you meant, but it doesn't say that.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. My mistake. If I'm not clear. Yes, Darcy.
I'm sorry, I have one more question. As far as if something went beyond the standard amount, and you mentioned that it comes back to the commission for mitigation, I think I have a question for Charlie. Is how does the commission get involved in knowing how to mitigate something if there is an issue? I mean, how are we going to decide what the commission be experts on how they're going to mitigate? How do you mitigate for something like this?
I think an aberrant reading would trigger alarms at a number of agencies. But since you're closest to the permitting right now, it comes to you. How do you mitigate it? We hire the experts we need. We go to council to get the funding for it. We perhaps, and it's certainly in Avangrid's interest to consider assisting us with the appropriate level of expertise to figure out what's going wrong here, and at least provide funding to us. So we can do that in time as an emergency order. If this is not in compliance with acceptable industry standards, perhaps wording to the effect that it's in violation of the order of conditions would be a good catch-all to hang our hat on, to allow us in our discretion to order a shutdown if issues were of sufficient concern and levels were of sufficient concern, so that you could order this thing shut down. And again, we've got a whole host of options to us if we've got a problem there to, on an emergency basis, to step in. So again, I am sure that the developer will be most interested in making sure that there are no problems here, and if there are problems identified, that they're quickly resolved. Otherwise, they've got a long-term problem that's bigger than ours, or as big as ours. So what I'm saying in a short, long-winded way is, we can address it when the time comes, and we'll get the expertise we need to back you.
What I suggest,
I was just thinking that language should be something that goes into the ongoing condition for the certificate of compliance. I think we would need legal to help.
Conditions that are outside of acceptable industry parameters shall be, and we can tweak this language, an indicator that they are not in conformance with their certificate of compliance, and will be cause for full range of options, including shutdown. So,
okay, I just think we're talking, lawyers like a lot of words, Charlie.
I know.
I mean, it's not mitigation, it's remediation. And I think that they said that, you know, where it exceeds industry standards, the monitoring report indicates that the applicant is required to submit a remediation plan for commission approval.
Yeah.
And that's,
And I think
that's fine if it's an extreme emergency. You can still take a position to whatever is needed to protect.
Right. And then the commission retains jurisdiction to do that. And the burden falls on them to submit the remediation plan. We have authority under the law. If we have to hire an outside expert, we have the authority to do that. So I think we got it covered, in my opinion. And keep it simple.
Do we need to have a time frame for that requirement in terms of response from the applicant? I mean, we don't want them to take 10 years to figure out how to fix the problem, right?
Given the risk, which is extreme if it goes wrong, potentially extreme anyway, you expect and require immediate response, and that'll be measured at the time. So.
Right.
But then the thing that you're getting into almost like an emergency response plan.
Right. Yes, you are.
Oh.
But we have a general statute that 214, chapter 214(7)(a) that threats to the environment can be the subject of immediate court action, and you could, with an appropriate leveled emergency, you could get a shutdown order from a court in 12 hours notice.
Yeah.
So
I'm wondering whether we need to go to that level. That's what I was trying to avoid.
And I'm sorry you broke up at the very last second. Of course, John and I will understand. John came from the corporate side. I came from the private side, and on the private side, we're billing by the hour, so that's why I'm talking so much. But there are plenty of solutions to an emergency, and they're pretty effective in this realm. So I take John's guidance as presented. So
thank you, sir.
May I ask a clarifying question? And I hopefully don't confuse it. Similar to the other plans or responses, is this an instance where you're requesting a EMF monitoring plan for review and approval prior to the start of work?
No. Because I only want to get some EMF measurements after your cable is energized. It's not before your construction. There will be no EMF readout.
Yes, I'm asking if the commission is requesting that we provide a formal plan that would detail the exact locations, the instrument, all those, everything.
Yeah, right now in the special condition, I did not go to that detail. What kind of equipment, what kind of calibration? Because you would talk about the equipment, then you talk about calibration and whole 9 yards. Then it's way above our heads.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I answer your question or not.
You certainly want to have a baseline, though, right?
Yeah, but we weren't asking for a plan to be submitted in advance. We're asking that monitoring reports be submitted at this time frame within these locations once they're up and running.
Yeah,
that's what we were asking for.
Right.
Yeah. One last word, Bill.
Yeah, we've been talking about risk and extreme problems and whatnot, and I just feel like, for the record, by anyone reviewing this little Zoom, I think every one of us is having, based on the testimony and based on what research we've done, we sincerely believe that the risk is minimal. However, given the limited data and science, we want to bolster this with some additional monitoring. I mean, I just think we need to say that, because we're talking about, it sounds like we don't, things could really go sideways. Well, no, we don't think things are going to go sideways, but there is that possibility in a very remote possibility. We want to monitor for that.
I agree with
Okay.
you, Bill.
I'll just offer one other thought to Bill's point, and that is the lead case on this subject is a case called Allen versus the Boston Redevelopment Authority, which dealt with the Boston University Biohazard Lab Level 4 maximum risk biohazard lab proposed for the South End 15 years ago, just right by Boston City Hospital. And the Supreme Court got involved in it, and the Secretary of Environmental Affairs at the time had approved the project, saying that the risk was slight, and we approved the project. And the court said, no, you've got it backwards. The measurement should be if there is any risk of it happening, albeit small or even very small, but the consequences could be catastrophic, then the utmost attention to location and all the other factors that would go into that analysis of a particular site and the risks involved need to be considered. You can't say that you cannot function and approve a project without doing that level of detail, because with Murphy's Law, McLaughlin speak, if Murphy's Law suddenly manifests itself and a slight chance suddenly materializes and becomes a problem, the risks and the mitigation for that need to be identified and found acceptable and responsive in the permitting process. So that's what the law is on it. Here, I agree that there were so many projects you go through downtown Boston and every place else with these high voltage cables, and they're well examined, they're well understood. We certainly will have advice available to us as we go through this process that can evaluate that risk analysis. But at the end of the day, the concern from our perspective is you got to take into consideration what the risk is and how do we mitigate it. And I think you're doing that. So I commend you.
Thank you, Charlie. John?
Yeah, we've been at that. I think we're pretty well coming to an end, but I'd like to address the public, and there's a few folks that are on the screen here. Questions, issues were raised, and Bill Hearn said this at the beginning. So Bill, I guess I'm repeating something you pointed out at the outset. There was comments, well, are they bonded, or what happens if, or has the company got this experience, or, do they don't even have power contracts yet, et cetera. Those kinds of comments were made by a number of folks. Please understand that those may be very legitimate issues, but we have no legal authority for addressing them. So folks, go forward, go to whatever agencies you need to go to raise those questions, because they are legitimate, but the commission cannot legally address those. So that's the only final comment I'll make there.
Thank you, John. With that, Charlie, I need some time to go and refine the conditions. So I am thinking about coming back on October the 10th, because the 3rd we have the park, we have that scuttling,
right,
multifamily stuff on that night. So if I can get the applicant to agree to extend the advisements period to October give me a couple more, give me at least 1 day, so go to October 17th. Would that be reasonable?
I certainly think it would be, and it would certainly be in their best interests to do so.
I
So
think
I will pose that
agreed.
question tomorrow morning and get it extended, hopefully tomorrow in writing.
And we would have the authority, Charlie, that if for some reason they refuse to do it, and I'm sure they will grant it, but if they did, then Tom, write the order of conditions as best you understand them and get them out so we don't lose the time frame, the statute of limitations. But I'm sure they'll be cooperative.
If there is no extension in an abstract analysis, I think my recommendation would be to perhaps deny the permit and take a vote accordingly.
Okay, you could do that.
I can assure you there's no objection to an extension.
Thank you, Hans.
And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Pete, I saw your hands up.
Yes, please. One, tiny comment thought. I really don't think we need EMF monitoring for 25 to 40 years. I think as we've narrowed down the concern expressed by our citizens, again, the ability to send it to experts if we see an anomalously high outside of industry standards or outside of safe limits, that's an emergency kind of problem. But I think emphasis on the first years is okay, but I think it's very redundant to send it out to 25 to 40 years as a continuous yearly monitoring, maybe every 5 years. But my understanding here is, and again, I don't have expertise, but if something starts to go wrong and salt water gets in and starts to grow and everything, the whole thing, collapses just like that. Again, I'm not an expert in this, but some kind of catastrophic failure, which results in huge EMF readings, you got salt water. And I think everything would crash there. I really don't think it's necessary to do this for 25 years. Thanks.
Thank you, Pete.
So you need a motion to continue this under an advisement until when, Tom?
So could I have a motion to continue this advisement to October the 10th? I asking for 17 just because for Darcy.
May I suggest for a hearing on, the continuation of the hearing to October 10 and a decision by October 17?
No, I was thinking about the 10 is to issue the revised draft so that we can finalize and then vote on it. There are extra 7 days I was thinking about allowing to Darcy to issue the order.
That's right, but the order has to be issued following your vote, and it can't be the same day as your next hearing or your next discussion on this. We need time post the 10th to make those final revisions and issue the order and get it mailed out and filed appropriately. So we got to have those extra 7 days, Tom.
Correct. That's why I said 17. When you extend it, it will go to 17, even though the hearing date will be on the 10th.
So your motion would be to continue for further consideration until October 10 and to issue a decision not later than October 17.
Correct.
Correct. So moved.
Roll call.
Abadili,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn,
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Tangney,
Aye.
Sampu.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, folks. Good night.
Our next hearing is at 6:30 on October the 3rd. So could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn,
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Tangney,
Aye.
Sampu.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 8:13.